Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about data types in Stata. And I talked about this a little bit in a previous video. The punchline was that there were two main types of variables in Stata, and you can see them. So I've brought in this auto.dta that's built into every copy of Stata. And you can see these two types of variables when you go into the browse window. So variables which are listed in red are string variables, where each entry Stata knows that this is a string of symbols, as opposed to all the other variables, the ones which are written in black and blue, are numeric variables, where Stata knows that the entry is really a number, and it treats the entry as a number for each observation. So that's a slightly superficial. There are actually subtypes within each of these categories within string and numeric variables. And if you have a question about those, you can type in help data type. And then that's going to bring up a help file which tells you all about the particular types of things. I'm just going to highlight a few things for you here. So the first thing is I want to show you how to go back and forth between numeric and string variables. And to do that, so here we have this variable weight. So if I wanted to, so this first observation, weight is equal to 2,930. So I could say something like list if weight equals 2,930 with these two equal signs, and now Stata is going to list the observation which had that particular weight. So each observation in this data set is a model of car. Okay, so now let's create, you'll notice that weight was a numeric variable here. It's written in black. So if we wanted to create a string variable out of a numeric variable, we could say tostring, and then the name of the variable that we want to convert. And then we're going to generate a new variable, and in this parentheses here, in gen, I'm going to come up with a name for this. I'm just going to call this string. Okay. So now I'll go back in the browse window, and you'll see there's this new variable which I've called string, which takes what looks like the exact same value as weight, except in this case now Stata sees this entry, for example, and says this is 3350 instead of 3,350. And if I now said list if string is equal to 2930, it's going to give me an error message. And I would have to say that what I really meant was list if the variable string takes the value 2930, whatever that is. Now Stata will dig up the observation that I wanted. You can also see this in the command summarize. So I'm going to summarize the variable weight. So weight has 74 observations, and it has a mean and standard deviation, whereas string, as far as this command is concerned, there are 0 observations of string, because there are 0 observations for which Stata believes the variable string is a number. So you want to be careful in some instances if you're bringing in a data set which somebody else built. It's possible that some of the variables may appear as strings where you really want to be working with them as numbers. So what you can do to turn them into numbers, so something like weight, I want it to take the string 2930 and interpret that as 2,930. And the command that you would use for that would be destring. So I'm going to say destring this variable called string, and I'm going to generate weight2. W2 is going to be the name of my new variable. And you can see here's this new variable, which now took string was 2930, so now W2 is 2,930. And this is going to behave exactly like weight. So if I did sum W2, now you'll see it behaves exactly like I would want this to. Okay, so that's one way to turn a string variable into a numeric variable. Of course, some string variables aren't just numbers purely. So like make over here, if I told Stata this is a number. Stata doesn't know what number AMC space PACER is. So I could also generate numbers for the different values that this variable took by labeling it as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And I can do that using the command encode. So I'll encode make, and I'll generate a new variable called M2 for make2. Now when we go back in the browse window here, all the way on the far right-hand side, now I have this variable. It looks like it's still written out in letters in here, but blue means it's just a numeric variable which has a label on it. So in this case, you can see when I scroll over it, it takes values like 1, 2, 3, and it's going to label these in alphabetical order. It skips up to 7 and 8 here because there are some foreign cars. This data was originally sorted by foreign, so it's going up in alphabetical order, and the fourth observation in alphabetical order is the Audi 5000 and the Audi Fox, etc. Okay, so that is that's converting a string variable into a numeric variable and a numeric variable into a string variable. The next thing I want to show you is one little glitch that can happen with numeric variables, which you might occasionally run into. So Stata stores variable values for numeric variables using binary. It turns out that binary, you have rounding issues if you're working with decimals. So to illustrate this, I'm going to generate num equal to 0.1. So we'll just create this new variable. And when I go over here into the browse window, here's num. And you see it looks like it takes the value of 0.1 for every observation. But it turns out that this isn't equal to exactly 0.100000 in Stata. Instead, because of binary, it stores it as something which is slightly different. So I can use the command count. So if I wanted to count like the foreign cars in this data set, I could say count if foreign equals 1. And it's going to tell me that there were 22 foreign cars in this data set. If I did this with num, count all the observations where num is equal to 0.1. Well, I said that every observation should be equal to 0.1, so it should be a bunch. Instead, it's going to tell me 0 observations take exactly this value. So this is a glitch due to a rounding error. It's comparing exactly 0.1 to the values which it has in the data set. The way to correct for this is using a function called float. So we're going to round this into its closest binary value using the function float. And now we're going to count all the observations where num equals this slightly rounded version of 0.1. And now we see that all 74 observations have this value. So this is this little glitch for variables which are of the type called float, which is going to be most of your decimals in Stata. The very last thing I want to show you is that sometimes it's possible to make your data set a little bit smaller, the amount of space that it takes up, using the command compress. And what compress is going to do is it's going to take any variable that you have which is stored inefficiently, and it's going to turn it into a slightly more efficient data storage type. So here we're taking these various variables which were stored as int, and now they've turned into bytes. And so this is saving 592 bytes. It's not a very large savings, but if you're working with a really huge data set, this might be something which matters for you.